All right. And then go ahead into the real thing.
All
Here
right.
we go. Three, two, one. Hi, I'm Andy Villamarzo with SBLive Sports, and thank you for joining us for our next episode here of the Coastal, our high school football podcast. And football is heading into week 4 here, and we're coming close to that midway point, and we're going around the state, and we wanted to catch up with our good friend here, Alan Pettigrew of the Ocala Star Banner. We want to talk a little bit about Marion County here and all the football going on in the county and Ocala. Obviously, we got some good teams over there. Alan, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Andy. Thanks for having me on, man. It's been a while since we saw each other last year, week 7 or so for Vanguard and Bellevue. Just glad to be on, man. I appreciate you for inviting me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for those who may not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself before we start to dig into these teams here in Marion County.
All right, guys. Alan Pettigrew Jr., like my guy Andy said, originally from Kansas City, Missouri. Very big sports fan. Originally started off as a scout for basketball, but as I moved over to Florida, I was seeing all of the talent in all of the different spaces here, and I was like, I gotta branch out. So I've been covering football in really any high school sport that you can think of with the Ocala Star Banner for the last year and a half, and I'm really excited to be in such a talent rich area. We have a lot of really talented dudes. So I'm really glad to be on this episode so we can talk about them, give them a little bit more coverage.
Absolutely. And Alan, without any further ado, and because we got some really good teams in Marion County, if people don't know, they might just think of horses because we know Marion County is known for the rich history and just having ranches out
Mhm.
there and horses. But there is some really good high school football out there, and one of the teams that I've gotten to see that I know you've seen and you know very much about, Vanguard Knights. I got to see him in that opener against Erie, Colorado, and what an opening night game that was. Pull it out 26-20 after that preseason game where they really, I think they showed the entire state that they're going to be a team to be reckoned with when they played
Yes.
Miami. Um, Alan, kind of just talk about the Knights. Obviously, they got Fred Gaskin, who's a USF commit. You got Dalen Ponder. You got a slew of just really talented kids on this team. And I mean, what's your thoughts on them so far?
Look, man, Vanguard is talent on top of talent on top of talent. Like, I don't care what class you're looking for. There is a guy who's probably holding a Division 1 offer on that roster. Um, Watching them is a really interesting experience. Um, they're so talented that I feel like they're almost taking turns to see who's going to make the first big play before everything happens. And that usually means they start off a little slower on the offensive end, but their defense is so good that it doesn't really matter for a lot of teams. Like, you might get some points on them, but once they flip that switch, you're not getting anything. They're going to get stops, a lot of 3-and-outs. You're not going to be able to move the ball. That is probably one of the best defensive backfields I've ever seen in my time covering football. There's Chris Allen, there's Fred Gaskins, there's Tillman, there's Cameron Powell. There's a lot of guys who can really just shut down their area. And then when we go to their backers like Markel Davis, all of those guys hit really hard and can do a lot of things. They're just really talented. And when we go back on the offensive side of the ball, playmakers at every single spot. Mitchell Brown has had really fantastic moments. I'm talking about ripping off 40-yard, 80-yard runs like it's nothing and really getting, like, making a gap on guys. Fred Gaskin is a true playmaker, and we can just run down the line. Like you said, Dallin Ponder, really good at moving the ball, really good at getting things in open field. And what they do on special teams is special. They have big playmakers everywhere, man. I really love this team. It's hard to describe what we're seeing on like a nightly basis just because they have their ups and downs, but their peaks are so much higher than their valleys that it's just kind of like when that valley, when that mountaintop comes, that's the game. That's the game.
Yeah. And last year, I mean, they reached the region semifinal. They ended up getting bounced out. But this team, I feel like there's a little bit different feel with them. Maybe they can make a run to the region final, and who knows? I mean, with they got a win over Lake Mineola that I thought was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
They're just coming off of last week's win over Dunellen. That was a tight one. I mean, they've played 3 pretty good opponents, and they've met the challenge each time. I mean, do you feel like there's a chance that they can go deeper this time around?
Andy, I'll tell you this because you mentioned the Dunellen game. Vanguard went down 21-0 by halftime. And the crowd, other coaches, we were all kind of just looking at each other like, oh, we didn't expect it to look like this. And within 4 minutes of them coming back on the field, they scored 2 touchdowns. The gap got smaller, and they just made winning plays down the stretch. Honestly, if this is what Vanguard looks like, and I only think as the season goes, they're going to have moments where they just really tighten up and understand that they don't have to wait for somebody to make the play. Anybody can just go out there and dominate. That happens, they're going to go pretty deep, man. Until they run up against the big guys in Orlando, and honestly, after what we saw them do with Miami Central early in the preseason, I don't know if there's a lot that can really slow them down. And they're going to slow you down if you're an offensive team. So it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough.
Well, they're definitely a team I've got my eye on. I've gotten to see them, so definitely kind of excited to see how they finish out the remainder of the schedule. Another team, I'd be remiss to not mention them when it comes to competing for a state championship. Is this Trinity Catholic Celtics? Another team I've gotten to see. They ended up missing that first game of the season against FSU Hive because of the COVID outbreak. But they play in week 2 down in Clearwater. And from what I saw, kind of a tough time because obviously didn't get to play week 1. CCC already got to play. And it was like the Celtics just kind of getting their wits about them, like I would think. And then last week playing Gainesville, they ran by them. I think it was 49-0. Gonna talk about the Celtics a little bit. I mean, I know they got AJ Cousins from North Marion that created kind of this. I want to say this musical chairs of quarterbacks kind of once again, because I know last year seeing Trinity Catholic, the one time I saw him, it's Preston Wright, and to me it was his team. But this year it seems like there's kind of a back and forth with the two guys. I mean, what's your thoughts kind of on this quarterback situation first off?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I think what we're seeing is an embarrassment of riches. You have one quarterback who got you to the big dance. You have another quarterback who's proving himself as a really talented guy who can throw the ball and really get his playmakers involved for the last 2 years at North Marion and AJ Cousins. So when you had that, especially early in the season, and Preston also plays baseball. So for a good part of spring ball, he wasn't there. So you come back, you're really trying to see which one stands out. And from all accounts, it doesn't sound like either one of them has had that full separation yet in practice. So when you got 2 really good guys, you see which one is going to be able to ride. And honestly, when both of them are on the field, they make plays. So I think the next 4, 5, 6, those weeks are going to be really important to see who established themselves as that QB1 and QB1 and only at that point.
And just looking at them, I mean, their offensive line last year, massive. I mean, looking at it, to me, it looked like a small college offensive line just because of you had probably 3 guys that were like over 300 pounds. Still pretty big offensive line. I know they graduated a couple guys, but just the Celtics obviously have high aspirations. They want to get back to the Class 1S state championship, losing last year to First Baptist Academy 21-3. I know that left a sour taste everyone's mouth, including Coach Brantley. I know could just kind of see it in his eyes, even there pregame when I was down in Clearwater, just talking to him. It's he knew it was going to be kind of a tough going, but he's put together a really tough schedule, Alan. This schedule is not for the weak at heart. I mean, I can go over some of the teams real quick with you. I'm looking at the list: Buchholz, Rains, FSU High. We got Calvary Christian, and then
Carrollwood Day.
yeah, and then they're going to go up to Ohio and play St. Xavier. I mean, that's a nationally renowned team. I mean, have you asked them what kind of made him want to put together such a tough schedule?
They want the smoke. That's what this regular season is about for them. They know they're going to take their lumps. They know they have to get guys together, but at the same time, they want them to be challenged throughout it all. So when you get to the playoffs and you run up against a really talented team, you're not scrambling to see what's going to happen. You've already been tested. Like Carrollwood Day has a lot of, they have what, 3-4 high major or Power 5 prospects. Yeah. So once you've already seen the pressure come playoffs, when you have the added attention of it only being what? You're down to the last 16, 8 teams. That pressure doesn't feel as bad because you've already seen really talented guys.
I could definitely agree with that. And at Class 1S, it's the smallest classification of all of the classifications. I think there's only like 23 teams. And I think the thought process here is really good because you go 5-5 or 4-6, but what does it matter if you win all of your playoff games and you win the state championship? At the end of the day, you could have all those losses, but they could still be holding the trophy, which is ultimately the goal here, putting this tough schedule together. So brilliant idea. And I think you're the first person through 10 episodes to use that term. They wanted all the smoke, and definitely putting that kind of schedule together, looking at that, there's no argument to that. They definitely want that. They want the pressure. They want the smoke, as you say. And going to be interesting to see. I know it starts with Carrollwood Day, and then we'll go down the line here. So we'll definitely have to follow up on all that. But another team that I wanted to talk about, Ocala Forest. This is very interesting. The Wildcats under Coach Cullen, they got some guys. I've been keeping my eye on this offense, really. Vimel Poole, Matthew Hart. These two are putting some really big numbers.
Video game numbers.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at it like one guy's got almost 500 yards passing. He's only played a couple games. Matthew Hart, he's already almost 250 through a couple games. You gotta tell me about this offense of the Wildcats and just how fun they are, kind of to watch. And I mean, what are your expectations for them?
I have high expectations for them, especially on the offensive end. Since last year, which was Cullen's first year with Forest, that man has engineered superior offenses. I'm talking about like close to 400 yards per game last year alone. And they just added more weapons this year. They got a guy named Israel Evans that transferred over from a school in Dallas, and he had 115 receiving yards last week. So there's a ton of guys that they can get involved, and the guys who catch the ball are just monsters. They're really quick in space. They're talented. And Evans, I think it's just going to be a matter of time before he's no longer the best kept secret in Marion County. Like he's one of those dudes. He looks the part. And offensively, they just do a really good job of spreading that ball around, man. I can't give you like the full X's and O's because I don't want to give anything away for Cullen. But what they, and then we just talk about VJ Poole, what he can do as a runner and what he can do as a passer just makes him super dangerous. If you want to close the pocket on him, cool. You just unleashed a dude that's probably running like a 4.5, 4.6. Good luck catching him. And if you give him space, he's going to make all the right reads and be able to find guys. Like weirdly, I think I've watched maybe 3, maybe 4 games of VJ last year. I don't think I saw him throw a single interception. Like he's just really smart, really talented, and has a great arm.
some good quarterbacks out of Marion County. I think people don't realize how many good ones are just hanging around there and slinging the rock this season, really playing good football. So that's where more and more we talk about it. It's like you can go down the line and probably be touching on 7, 8, 9 different quarterbacks.
Mhm.
Only so many teams in Marion County, but that's how talent rich when we're talking about the signal caller position. We're like some good passers in the county. So definitely over at Forest, team to watch for. Now, a team we just touched on that gave Vanguard a run for their money, Dunellen. Touch on the Tigers. I mean, they go up 21-0, which I didn't even know that. So that makes me wonder, what do they got over there, Alan? Because I know you were at the game and you had some great footage. I mean, even though they lost the game, still, and no moral victories and a loss. But if there is any souls to take out of it, it is that you played that close with the Vanguard. And Denellen's, I know they got Dylan Curry at quarterback. He's a good little, I think he's a sophomore, good little player
Mhm.
there. Kind of just tell me a little bit about the Tigers. What's your thoughts on them and watching them?
They just have dudes, Andy. They have dudes who know how to play and are super goal oriented. What Coach Sutton has done with that team is really impressive because all of these guys were sophomores and juniors last year. So you could see the talent coming up. They just weren't young enough to put it all together. And this year, they have enough maturity, they have the strength, they have the size where they can really get stuff done. Um, Sean Martin has been a revelation for me this season. He's playing both sides of the ball. When he gets the ball in space, he's going to tear you up. He's really quick. He's surprisingly strong. And his cover skills are pretty darn good. And then you got West Virginia commit uh, Chris Henry, and he in itself is another dude that plays both ways, and he's going to make plays. It doesn't matter where he is on the field; he's just going to get stuff done. In low key, one of the better returners we have in this area, which is saying a lot considering all of the different athletes we have up here. And then, like you said, Dylan Curry. I've been talking with Sutton about Dylan Curry for the better half of since the preseason. Last year, he was a freshman. Sophomore, you can tell that he's coming into his own a little bit. The team is listening to him a little bit more. And once you take the pads off him, he looks like a football player. He's just a big young man. And honestly, by the time he's a senior, he's going to be one of the more battle tested dudes that it might be a mistake considering who they have to play when they want to get time for the playoffs. Dylan's just really good, man. Like Dylan Donahue, he's their running back and their linebacker, and he will hit you on both sides of the ball. They're just a lot of dudes. I don't have enough time to run down all of the names because that's going to be an episode in itself. But
Yep.
Dylan is really talented, man. Really talented.
Well, and I love me some small town football. I know that's kind of one of those small towns in itself where you could go there and they probably
Mhm.
have a real crowd and everything. Everyone wants to come out and watch the Tigers play on a Friday night. So that's kind of on my bucket list of teams that I want to go watch because I just feel like they probably got a pretty good environment over there. And
For
I know
sure.
you've been there, so you definitely will have to meet up over at Denellen. Got a few more teams here, Alan, to go over, and then I'm gonna ask you about some teams or one of these teams who surprised you, and maybe a player or two that you feel like is having a breakout year. But we'll go down the line because we do have some of these other teams. Who out of Westport, North Marion? We got Bellevue, Lake Weir. I mean, kind of tell me a little bit with North Marion. I'll touch on them first. I know they had a off season that was really tough on Coach Carr with kind of all the transfers out. Lost a lot of players to Hawthorne. Obviously, a few to Trinity Catholic. I mean, where are the Colts right now? Because this is kind of tough for them because they were a team that had a really good season last year. Now, I mean, where do you go from here?
Right. Andy, that question is really hard to ask because we're in week 4
Yeah.
and North Marion has played One game.
One game? What?
Between early season cancellations and then the hurricanes, they just haven't been able to get on the field on Friday nights. So between that and them just being an overall young team, I was talking to the coaching staff. They said they have about 7 guys who had varsity experience. So, but when you go watch their practices, there's a bunch of athletes that just know how to get things done. It's about that translating to game. And I think that's going to be another team where, as they get farther into the season, that's where we'll see what they really are. There's guys who are just learning their roles right now. And as each one of them comes into their own, we'll see a little bit more. Like, they're working in a sophomore quarterback right now. He just needs time. He needs time. But he's also had really big plays so far this season. I get it. It's only been one game, but that's kind of just where they are right now. And in all honesty, it's the same with Bellevue. Bellevue had a new coach. They lost a bunch of talent. Dylan Curry was their quarterback last year. And now they're looking to seniors who have been on the team or probably haven't been on the team to kind of make some plays. And it's a work in progress. They have to learn a new system. They have to learn a new coach. And at the same time, they have to learn what their role is and continue to grow in that. And we might not see that happen until midway through the season.
Yeah, and it's tough when you're trying to break in a lot of young players, trying to get them kind of acclimated to the varsity level. And I mean, Coach Carr, as many may know, Greg Carr from Florida State, playing the wide receiver position. I mean, he was catching jump balls from what I remember when I was following him. So sure he'll find a way to kind of get the ship in the right direction. But kind of just a tough off season, but and kind of a tough early season. They haven't been able to play, so it's going to be hard to judge them until they actually start to actually play teams. But tell me a little bit about Westport. I know Westport's been a team that they're 1-2 right now. Seem like they've had kind of a tough time when it comes to competition here. They've had a couple good teams, and then they've won a game. So, I mean, you got to talk about the Wolfpack real quick. Just kind of what's your thoughts on them?
For sure. Westport is a surprisingly young team. Their receiving core, which I think is probably one of their better position groups, all of them are juniors, with the exception of like 2 guys. And those guys have flashes where when they catch the ball, they can make a big play. They can get out in space. But right now, I think they struggle a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. And a lot of guys are playing both ways. So let's go out on a hunch there and say that's a thing that's draining them a little bit. But they're an interesting group that we have to see more of to really give like a full story. But they have some talented dudes like Dedrick Grady, who transferred over from Wildwood last year. I saw him score 2 returning touchdowns, both over 60 yards when they played Denellen. That kid is electric when he gets the ball. Britton Stevens is starting to become more of a leader. You can hear him talking in the huddle. You can hear him talking on the sideline. He looks a little bit more comfortable in the pocket, but at the same time, the team is kind of small. So there's not a ton of protection that he has. And I really just think this is going to be a bit of a tough year for them as they figure out who they are. And they could really be a sleeper more next season. But I don't count out Westport at all. I could really see them figuring things out. Coach Harper is a really smart guy, and all of these players seem like they care a lot. Like, just watching that first game that they had against Denellen, even when they were down double figures, nobody was giving up. They were upset, but they wanted to go out there and make up the ground that they had lost.
Well, it sounds like they're just an up-and-coming team, and we'll have to see if they blossom at some point during the middle of the season. Last team I kind of want to touch on, They're not in the FHSA State Series. They're actually in the Sunshine State Athletic Association. That's the Lake Weir Hurricanes. We don't want to forget about them. And they're actually the only other undefeated team outside of Vanguard. They're 2-0 Hurricanes. Let's talk about them real quick. I mean, Lake Weir. I mean, they moved over to this association, and kind of talk about the ball they're playing so far.
All right. So again, another team. We're in week 4, only played 2 games, but they had a COVID scare. St. Francis had canceled their game because they had a COVID outbreak. Smaller team, but if one person got it, you know more than one person has it. And then the next week, the hurricane came through, washed that game away. So they've played 2 games, 4 days, 2 wins. And they have had the experience of playing a really tight game and coming away with the win. They've also had a blowout game. So at this point, they're pretty battle tested, especially within a 4-game span. So they go down to George Jenkins this weekend, and I think we're on the verge of seeing Lake Weir have one of the best seasons they've had in quite a while, just because they're looking at a different level of competition, and more importantly, they're buying into what their coach has set out for them. Like, this is a team that when they came in last year, they probably had 20 or so people come out for spring football. In May, they had 40 plus, and a lot of those guys were seniors. So guys who probably sat out last year and were nervous to get back on the field were excited this year to play. So that means a lot for the culture that's happening with the team. And I'm really excited to see what they can do by the end of the season, especially under Coach Roberts. Coach Roberts is a really good dude. He has a military background, and he's getting those guys like tight-lipped. And then you think about the talent that's in their defensive backfield too. There's a lot of long-rangey guys who they look mean. They look mean when they're flying around there, man. They don't want anybody to make a play on them. So as they become more disciplined, that's where we're really going to see the bright spots of what could be for this hurricane season.
And Lake Weir, for people who don't know, they have a proud history. They've been around. Alan, we're going to go to the portion where I'm going to ask you just a couple questions on teams. Who's been the surprise team for you so far?
It has to be Lake Weir. It has to be Lake Weir. What Lake Weir has been able to do by winning 2 games in 4 days, I'm talking about, like, you don't even get enough time to rest up. And then you come out and blow out that team. That is a confidence builder in itself. And I just kind of, they have a sweetheart story going on right now. Like, we know they won their district last year, but their record overall wasn't that great. Then you move over to the Sunshine Athletic Association. There's some things that are moving around. We don't know exactly what's going on. There's a new coach. There's just a lot of shakeup. And yet they come out here and they're looking like a team that's more than competent. More guys are coming out. And this is a really like heartfelt story that I like seeing from Lake Weir.
And they're definitely a team on the rise coming into this season. I don't know if people were expecting them to get out 2-0 start, but when you play 2 games in 4 days and you win both, I mean, that is a kudos to you. You are doing something. You are moving in the right direction. And then give me a couple players to you that is right now that is, I don't know, either surprised you or you feel like are having a breakout season.
Got you. I would have to say Dylan Donahue. What I've seen for him over the last few weeks playing pretty good teams is that kid just plays football. It doesn't matter where you put him. If you make him a ball carrier, he's going to be able to run through guys' faces. If you make him a linebacker, he's going to wish you didn't. He's going to make you wish you didn't try to run through his face. He's just a really tough kid. I think Mitchell Brown playing with Vanguard, this is going to be a really big opportunity for him to show a lot of other people how special he is as just like a speed athlete, man. Once he gets that ball, there's 2 steps and he's gone. He's just leaving gaps in between himself and other people. And speaking of another guy from Forest, Jordan Strickland. He's a sophomore, but that kid is electric. I'm talking about probably 6 foot, 180, probably being a little nice on the weight, but he's just a rock solid dude. And I want to say earlier in the season, he almost had a 200-yard game between, between receiving and what he did as a return man. If you give him space, he's going to make a really big play. He's going to get big chunk plays. And I think he only touched the ball like 5 or 6 times that game. So every time he gets it, he's going to give you yardage.
Well, that's impressive. Definitely got to keep an eye out for him as we go throughout the season. But those are some names to watch out for out of Marion County. And well, I think we've touched on a lot of things here during our time here, Alan, and we're gonna end up signing out here. But I do thank you for coming on the Coastal with us today, and we'll have to touch base again here before either the end of the season or during the playoffs at some point.
For sure, Andy. It's been great. Thanks for having me on, man. Come down to Denellen. We'll get a good game in, man. Trust me.
Absolutely. Well, Alan, thank you for coming on with us once again. That is Alan Pettigrew with the Ocala Star Banner. We're talking Marion County High School football and everything around the Ocala area. That is your latest episode of the Coastal. We thank you for watching.